On July 9th, Phil Hanlon sent out an email saying that he was cutting 5 sports: men's and women's swimming and diving, men's and women's golf, and men's lightweight rowing. And a lot of people were super pissed off, and rightfully so. I mean, he cut 5 teams after giving them only an hour's notice. Like, who is this guy, Danny Ainge? But to me, Hanlon's decision wasn't just about these 5 sports. It's part of a much bigger story about the role of athletics in the Ivy League. And that's what I want to talk about today. Now, when I first read Hanlon's letter, I didn't really mind. And let me explain to you why before you think I'm an asshole. Swimming, golf, and rowing have something in common. You need a significant amount of money and resources in order to get recruited. You need access to a good pool, a rowing machine, golf clubs, or a country club membership. So it's not surprising at all that these teams are almost exclusively white and Asian. Shit looks like a 6th grade SAT prep class. Not lightweight rowing though, they're actually pretty diverse. They got tall white guys, skinny white guys, tall skinny white guys. He actually ran the numbers, and golf is 50% white, swimming is 72% white, and lightweight rowing is 81% white. And I know what you're thinking, that's pretty good, right? No, the other half is entirely Asian. People like to spread this myth that affirmative action is somehow this quota system, but in reality, athletics is the real quota system. For sports like lacrosse or squash or sailing, we are reserving admission spots for people with means. And true, maybe most of these recruits may have been able to get into Dartmouth without their sport, but being good enough at a sport to get recruited definitely gives you some advantage. Harvard gives all their applicants an academic score between 1 and 6. And if you're an athlete and you get a 4, you have a 70% chance of getting into Harvard. Now compare that to a non-athlete who gets a 4. They only have a 0.076% chance of getting in. Also, what the hell is the point of lightweight rowing? Because to me, it just seems like rowing for people who are weak at rowing. Like, it's not like we have lightweight football or short people basketball. Oh, okay, maybe I am an asshole. The more I looked into it, though, the more I realized that there's a ton of things off with the administration's explanation of why they made these cuts. In his email, President Hanlon says there's 2 main reasons. 1, the pandemic-induced deficit, and 2, his ultimatum of reducing the number of recruited athletes by 10%. Let's look into the deficit first. The pandemic is estimated to cost the college $150 million. So when you add up the coaching salaries, travel expenses, and the golf club closing, that gets you $2 million. Now subtract $150 million minus $2 million and boom, that's $0 deficit, problem solved. Alright, so what's actually up with reducing the number of recruited athletes? Hanlon says that athletic recruitment at Dartmouth has begun to impact our ability to achieve the right balance between applicants who are accomplished in athletics and applicants who excel in other pursuits. Now, as many athletes have pointed out, Hanlon is implying that student athletes can't excel in other areas. And I'm pretty sure he doesn't actually mean that, but just in case, I decided to interview some athletes to get to the bottom of this. Hi, my name is Breggy.
What are you doing?
Oh, I just wanted to make sure you guys could understand me, and even smart people have trouble with my name. Anyway, to start this off, I wanted to give you guys an IQ test. What color is this?
We aren't dumb. The swim team GPA was 3.46 for this winter term when we were in season. And the incoming 24s, their SAT scores was average 1,500 and ACT was a 34.
Yeah, I don't know about the SAT and ACT scores, but the lightweight rowing team average GPA is 3.67. This past year, we had a senior who was Phi Beta Kappa, and the highest GPA is 3.98. The lowest GPA is 3.20. So yeah, we're not done either.
Those GPAs aren't even that good.
What's your GPA?
I'd rather not say. Okay, so maybe Hanlon's theory was just slightly inaccurate. Another big problem with Hanlon's email is his explanation of why these sports specifically were chosen to get cut. Hanlon says these teams were chosen on the basis of 1, the ability to provide a high-quality student-athlete experience, 2, power to build community, 3, history and tradition of success, 4, potential for future success, 5, quality of facilities in relation to our peers, 6, national participation at high school and college levels, 7, Dartmouth's geography and climate, and 8, the level of investment required to ensure future competitive success in sports in which we are not now experiencing success. The interesting thing about this is that lightweight rowing actually meets most of these criteria. High quality student athlete experience, power to build community, quality of facilities, check, check, check. Geography and climate, we live right next to a river. Rowing has history and tradition of success. Dartmouth rowing has been around since 1832, and even though they haven't been too good recently, they got third in 2011 and second in 2012, losing to Harvard by only 0.07 seconds. I mean, is second not good enough for Phil Hanlon? Is Phil Hanlon secretly my mom? Future success? It turns out that the coach Dartmouth had back in 2011 and 2012 just came back this season. And according to him, this is the best he's ever seen Dartmouth lightweight rowing. And more than half of the lightweight rowing team are walk-ons anyway. Even if lightweight rowing hadn't met most of those criteria, I don't think it's fair to base so many of them off of success. I mean, sailing would have gotten the boot for sure, but they won a national championship last year, which I get is impressive, but national sailing championship, YMCA basketball runner-up, is there really a difference? And it's not just Hanlon's email that was emphasizing success, it's also AD Harry Sheehy, who was asked to reduce the number of admitted athletes by 10%. That reads less like a college official and more like a mafia hitman. A lot of people, including me, were wondering why Sheehy decided to eliminate 5 entire teams instead of just reducing the number of athletes across the board. And it turns out it has everything to do with success. Now, here's Sheehy's argument. He says that if each team loses between 1 or 2 recruiting spots, that means that team is going to lose 4 or 8 athletes over the next 4 years. After losing that many recruits, he says that most Dartmouth teams simply wouldn't be able to be competitive within the Ivy League. That those teams would pretty much become D3 teams. And as Sheehy put it, the student-athlete experience would go right down the tubes. Okay, there's a couple things I don't understand about this. I don't think losing 4 recruits would ruin entire teams. All that would mean is there'd be 4 more walk-ons, and according to the athletes we interviewed, walk-ons do some pretty incredible things.
This year, our captain, Commodore, and MVP were all walk-ons. A Commodore is kind of the crew term for a co-captain. So they were all walk-ons. All of our remaining seniors were walk-ons. And one of our fastest 2K times, which is the race length, was done by a walk-on who pulled a 6:18, which is the equivalent, the competitive equivalent of running about a 4-minute mile.
Why do you think the walk-ons are so successful?
I think it's just like the way that these sports work is that it requires like a lot of commitment and hard work in order to be successful. And so when you like look at the type of students that are like enrolling into Dartmouth, they've like worked their entire lives like really hard to get to this point. And so when you have like people who are able to like get this chance at Dartmouth to swim, and they're like training with some of like the best swimmers, and the Ivy League has great competition for swimming, and so they're able to push themselves to try to like get to that standard as well.
I mean, who doesn't love a good underdog story? We've all seen Disney movies. Also, each class only has about 1,100 students. And according to the college for the class of 2023, there are only 138 recruited athletes. And now we don't know the exact numbers of how many were recruited overall, but we do know that most student athletes apply ED. So let's be generous and guesstimate that there are 200 student athletes recruited. Reducing the number of recruited athletes by 10% just means cutting 20 students max per class. I mean, Dartmouth, you are not making widespread institutional reform by just cutting 20 students. 16 plus Dartmouth students have accused the college of sexual assault, and you guys didn't change for that. You're gonna pay these 20 athletes $14 million in hush money too? Even if Sheehy's numbers made sense, I don't understand why Dartmouth cares so much about being competitive in the Ivy League and providing a D1 experience. I mean, Brown had the same philosophy too. Brown wanted to cut 11 sports and make sailing a varsity sport while cutting track and field, probably the most accessible sport there is. Now, students and alumni were able to get track and field back, but why would Brown want to do this in the first place? Well, Brown has been ass at sports this last decade, and they want to reallocate money to sports they think they would succeed at. Here's where I think Dartmouth and Brown are looking at athletics completely wrong. Ivy League athletics are about building a sense of community and teaching student athletes life lessons. They aren't just about pursuing an Ivy League championship. And I don't think Dartmouth does a great job of providing a D1 experience right now. I mean, Dartmouth versus Cornell is not the same thing as Duke versus UNC. And not just because Cornell sucks ass. And I watched Dartmouth basketball play Florida Gulf Coast University with 30 people max in the stands and 7-year-olds playing basketball for a halftime show. I mean, I had a great time, but it didn't exactly scream D1 experience to me. And if they care about success so much, why wasn't Dartmouth men's lacrosse cut? Dartmouth men's lacrosse has only won in 1964, 1965, and 2003. And though this isn't a perfect indicator of wealth, we looked into the high school background of the 2019 to 2020 team. Roughly 57% of Dartmouth students come from public schools. For lightweight rowing and for football, those numbers are 54% and 51%. For lacrosse, it's 37%. Last year, our record was 2-11. And in the past 10 years, our best record is 5-10. I should not be taller than our best record in the past 10 years. Let me be clear. We don't think Dartmouth men's lacrosse should be cut, but if Ivy League schools actually want to reform athletics, they need to reduce the number of recruited athletes in all sports with high economic barriers. And if Dartmouth is so worried about staying competitive in the Ivy League, why can't they collaborate with other schools to reduce the number of athletes in the same sports? And I understand that Dartmouth could never eliminate skiing because we have our own skiway, but can't they collaborate with other schools to collectively reduce the size of squash or hockey teams? That way, schools wouldn't have to decide between cutting an entire team or keeping a failing team. Every Ivy has a diversity problem and a structural racism problem. Well, except for Dartmouth, though. I mean, they said so on their tax returns. This is a real thing, Form 990. And when asked if they racially discriminate, Dartmouth said no. We all know nobody lies on their tax returns. And the point is that reforming athletics isn't completely going to fix Dartmouth's diversity and structural racism problem, but it's an important first step. And Hanlon, come on, man. Step your game up. We aren't Florida Gulf Coast University.